Yeah, no doubt. No, we're kind of in limbo. We have no idea what's going on at all times. So we just we're just waiting to hear back, and eventually we'll get rocking again.
Cool. Well, man, I really appreciate you coming on. And I know that I have a lot of listeners who are super excited that I had you on. So, just for the listeners and viewers in Hong Kong, why don't you just give us a little bit of background on yourself and how you got started, how you started with Pure Sweat, and like I told the guys before, I think it's an amazing story how you started off. Just give us a little background on yourself and how you got started.
Yeah, the 1 minute story is basically I was working hard at a gym. There were three courts at the facility. I was on one court, and there were two games going on courts one and two.
Mm.
And I found myself with my hands on my knees, in between kind of a set. And a parent came over, put his arm around me, and was like, "Hey, is there any way that you could work out my son and put him through that exact same workout that that I just saw you go through?" And so I was like, yeah, I would love to, help your son out. And he was like, I'll give you $20. And so I was like, wow, I wasn't even expecting it. I was just going to help the kid out. But, that kind of started my training career. And then from there, I started working with a lot of players in St. Louis, one of them being Brad Beal. Brad exploded. I started working with him when he was 13 years old. He had averaged like 7 or 8 points a game as a freshman in high school. And we worked out all summer long. And the next year, his second game of his sophomore year, he scored 52 points. And, that year he actually won a state championship. It was funny because his freshman year was my senior year in high school. And I won a state championship my senior year. And then he followed it up with the back-to-back and won his sophomore year, my freshman year in college. But once Brad, really exploded and took off, his game was kind of the proof that, the work that I was able to do with players was going to help them get results. And then word of mouth spread, and the rest is kind of history.
Nice, nice. Well, I know that we have a wide variety of people who listen to this, from strength and conditioning coaches to skills coaches to head coaches. So it seems like nowadays there's a skills guy, skills coach on every corner, on every street court, and every open run. What's for the skill coaches out there? What's some of the ways that they can separate themselves from the others? What does it have to do? I'm sure like it takes a lot of hard work, a lot of continued education. But what are some of the ways? What are some of the ways that they can separate themselves from other skill coaches?
To be honest with you, it's one word: results. And I
Mm,
say that all the time, but like if you can help players improve their game, if you can help players, constantly grow and get closer to where they need to go, then you're going to have a job, and word of mouth is going to spread, and other people are going to want the same sauce that you're giving the player that you're working with currently. So if you have a group of players and you do a really good job with them and they get results, everybody else is going to want those same results, and they're going to give you a chance. And then once you get in the gym with them, it's just your job to help them get the same results that they saw, the previous clients get. So it's literally like a forest fire, man. You know what I mean? You
mm,
light one player's game up, and the rest is history.
right, right. And another thing as a skills coach, we play a big role in the team, but we play just a role in the team. We're not the reason why the player either does well or doesn't do well. In terms of developing a relationship with the head coach, how can we be in line with what they're looking for, in terms of what they want from the player, as well as helping the player grow, rather than maybe going against some of the things that they may believe, especially with someone who is a little bit more traditional?
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I think the first thing is, everybody has to understand that the players make players.
Mm,
Like trainers don't make players, coaches don't make players. Now, we can help players, and that's our job, is to kind of make them more efficient and more effective so that they can get great results. But like, I always look at like my clients are all NBA players. Like they would all be NBA players without me. They would all be, all stars if they're all stars without me. But my job is to take their game from, maybe a 8 out of 10 to a 10 out of 10.
mm,
You can raise them a few levels. And part of that goes with helping make sure that everybody in their circle is pushing them in the same direction. And I
mm,
think that that's where some skills coaches kind of mess up, is they think that, because they let ego get in the way, they think that they want all the credit, or they need all the credit, or they deserve to, have kind of, full authority on what they do. But the truth is, you need the coach, the trainer, the skills coach, the lifting coach, the therapist, anybody else, that's around that player that has the player's ear. they all need to be on the same page, pushing the player in the same direction so that the player isn't getting tugged in multiple directions.
Right, right. And one of the things I remember when I met you is that you said that there's wrinkles between high school and college and the NBA. So there's little wrinkles that you can add into a player's game, little bits and pieces here and there. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more? Because I think a lot of our listeners feel that there's a huge gap. I mean, obviously there is a big gap, but between like a Division I college player and the NBA, what are those little nuances that you really need to add? And what are the details that you look into when evaluating a player and taking them to the next level?
I mean, the first thing is mentality. I think that that's something that a lot of people skip over, but like the belief, that they can play at that next level, that's the first thing that helps people stand out. I tell a story all the time. Isaiah Thomas, the current Isaiah Thomas, I know a lot of people now are thinking about the old school Isaiah Thomas because of the Michael Jordan documentary, but the current Isaiah Thomas, I grew up playing basketball against him. And I'll never forget when he was in like 8th grade, we were hanging out in Vegas, and I remember he told one of my best friends that he was going to go to the NBA and play in the NBA. At the time, he was probably like, maybe like 5'4". And I remember we were looking at him like he was crazy. We didn't think he had any chance, but he truly believed that he was going to make the NBA. And while we thought he was just joking around, he made it happen. And then I look back at my career and I'm like, man, I knew I was going to play college basketball. I really wanted to play in the NCAA tournament, but I didn't have that same belief that I was going to make the NBA. And I wonder all the time, like, what would my game have been like if I actually had the belief that I could have got to that level? You know what I mean? Would it have elevated my game? Would I have made the NBA? Would I have? So I think the first thing is mentality. Second thing is, the biggest reason why I broke down the Michael Jordan, micro skill series on my Instagram and my Twitter or my text community was because I wanted to show people that MJ mastered the fundamentals. He was always on balance. He was always accelerating and decelerating. He was stopping and starting, changing speeds. He was playing with crossovers between the legs, spin moves. He every once in a while went behind the back, but like he was literally playing with 3 go-to moves. Then he had the fake crossover with the inside out. He had the stutter steps, which was, again, not really a move. It was just his footwork. But he was combining basic footwork with basic moves, and he became the most unstoppable scorer of all time. And so I think that mentality is number one thing that separates players. Number two is do you have the fundamentals and do you have a foundation that you can build on and grow? And then the third thing is obviously, talent comes from putting in work and putting in the right work. So, making sure that you choose the right things to work on so that you can get good at the things you're going to actually do in games. I think there's a lot of players out there that either A, don't work hard enough. They think that hard work means just like going out there and grinding like every day. That's not good enough. Number two is they don't work smart enough. Maybe they go out there and they work on 2-ball dribbling drills, and then in the game somebody pressures them and they're not ready for it, and they're like, man, I've been working so hard. I can't believe that, like, when the game time came, I didn't get the results. Well, you didn't work on the same things that you were doing in games. So you gotta work hard, which means like separating yourself, by putting in more work. Second, you got to work smarter. And third, you got to be consistent. You got to bring your effort and energy consistently. And if you don't work hard, work smart, and work consistently, then you're really, going to fall behind eventually.
As skill coaches, you always say game drills, game results. And we want to make sure that we maximize every minute that we have with a player because it's usually not very long, might usually be an hour or 90 minutes or something like that. How do you ensure that you take them through a step-by-step process? I mean, obviously, there's a lot of evaluating that has to go on so that everything that they work on with that hour and a half with you will do its best to translate into the game.
I think the easiest way for people that are watching is just ask yourself, what are you going to do in games? Like, for me, what I do is I go reverse engineer everything. I'll go watch it, all their game film. I'll literally write down, okay, they drove from the slot to the wing. Okay, we got to work, slot to kind of wing drives. And then, all right, the next thing they did was they came up a high pick and roll. Okay, we got to work on a high pick and roll. Okay, they turned the ball over when the defender was in a drop coverage and they snaked back, but they, when they snaked, they went, too high with the dribble. Okay, we've got to work on that. So really it's just asking yourself kind of what do you do in games and reverse engineering it and working on those scenarios, working on the skills that you need within those kind of situations. And then if you master those, then you're going to be prepared next time that you're thrown in that exact same situation in the game.
Yeah, because I remember when I sat down and talked with you, we went over some film and we went over synergy and we broke things down. And a lot of the times when we go in and work on skill work, we might work on a lot of ISO stuff that we think that's real important. But when we broke the numbers down, it's actually interesting how many ISO situations some of the best players in the world get in games, which is actually not very much. So I know that there's a lot of young listeners watching right now and listening to this, and they may go on NBA and watch LeBron and watch especially Steph and want to be able to do that stuff. I know you're going to go back and reiterate the same kind of stuff, but what do those players, if there's only a few things that they need to work on in like 90 minutes, what are the things that you really want to harp on in terms of their development?
Shooting, finishing, decision making, and defense. Those four things are like the golden nuggets. If you can shoot the ball, then most likely you're going to have a chance to play. If you can defend and shoot the ball, now you're really going to have a chance to play. If you make good decisions, which means taking care of the ball and also creating for yourself and others, that's going to help you out a ton. And then finishing, because if they run you off the line, if you're a good shooter and they run you off the line, you got to be able to convert around the rim. But if you can do those four things, every coach in America is going to want to play you.
Right. So when you talk about decision making, that's something that's a little bit harder to work on yourself. For those people who want to go out and make sure that they get that aspect of it, do you have any advice on what they can do? Maybe they call a couple friends over, or do they need a coach in that situation? Because we had other speakers or other guests come on the show, and a lot of the other speakers talk about being able to read the game and how reading the game is one of the most important parts of it. How can we implement that decision-making component into our skill development?
Well, first thing, if you're by yourself, you can watch film. I mean, studying kind of different patterns and studying different schemes and rotations definitely gets you to the answers quicker. The second thing is you just got to build up in a progressive manner. So let's say we take something as basic as a slot drive where you're at the slot, you rip through towards the wing, but you drive downhill at the basket. The first scenario that you're going to be in is you just blow by your defender and there is no rotating secondary defender and you finish with a dunk or a layup. So that's the first thing you would work on. The second thing that could happen is you try to blow by your defender, but your defender is in a trail position, so you have to work on kind of different finishes against a primary defender, maybe a veer finish, maybe kind of a keep high finish, maybe some kind of finish that gets inside of them and then extends out. Then the third scenario could be you blow by your defender and now a secondary defender rotates over. Now you've got a finish against a secondary player. You know, that could be a Euro step or a spin move or a cross step, or you've got to pass it to the rotating defender's man. So that'd be like a pass to the dunker spot. Then you build it up and say, now you blow past your defender, a rotating defender comes over, but then a weak side, defender drops down to the level of the ball, and now you've got to throw a skip pass because no longer is that lob or dunk available. So that's how you build it up. You kind of work on all the progressions, and then what you do is you put yourself in those scenarios where, you're in a 2-on-2 drill or you're in a 3-on-3 drill and you're having to make live reads so that when you get to that 5-on-5, then you've been fully prepared.
So again, you talk about the decision-making part and how it's correlated to watching film. I think a lot of us, especially me when I was younger, overlooked the part of watching film. And that's really, it's working hard, but it's really working smart. And you keep saying that's where you probably learned the most is by watching film. You can play all the games that you want. You can practice all that you want in a controlled environment. But watching film is really where you can be able to critique yourself on what you need to improve on. So say, for example, someone, an athlete's in the off season or a basketball player's in the off season or even in the in season. How much tape should they actually be watching? I know that's a question, give or take, but how much tape did you watch when you were in college?
Yeah, so I mean, it really depends. What I would tell you is that you need to watch enough film to make yourself really comfortable, and that's all that really matters. I think that most people, they stop short of what makes them feel comfortable, and that's when they kind of have problems. But some of my clients watch all the time. Like, I mean, every possession, every game they'll rewatch, and then I'm sending them voiceovers on what they should have done better, what they could have done in different scenarios. Some of them watch just a little bit of film. They just want to say, hey, listen, Drew, I don't need you to replay the game in my mind because I remember what happened. But if there's little things that stand out to you that I need to make adjustments on, then hit me with that. So I would tell you that it's just, it's all about the player just getting comfortable and preparing. It's very similar to like shots. Everybody says, how many shots did you take? Well, shoot as many shots as you need to until you feel comfortable, So There's not one answer, but I would just say that they should watch enough film so that they can make adjustments and feel good and feel confident that they're progressing towards the players that they want to become eventually.
Okay. Okay. So if we're going to think about an off season, or not even an off season, let's say we have a lot of time on our hands, like a lot of us do right now. How would you
Yep.
plan out? Let's say all the basketball courts were available, the weight rooms were available, and we really wanted to get as good as we can at our game and make huge strides during the off season. How would you
Yep.
properly plan it so we can manage volume, workload, and intelligently progress and move forward so that we see great results when it matters most, which is during the season? And I'm asking you this question quite selfishly because I actually worked when I was in college, and I worked really hard, but I worked very, very unintelligently, which
Yeah.
led me to have several stress fractures in my foot. And then I was out for the beginning of preseason. So how do you usually manage that with your clients?
No doubt. One of the things I want to do is I want to address one of the comment questions, and they were asking, what film should you watch, NBA or your own? You should watch your own first and foremost so you can identify kind of what areas of your game you need to add to, or you can tweak and adjust to make yourself a better player. And then you can also study college and NBA film like other players outside of you so that you can learn what you should do in those scenarios. So, for instance, if you struggled at you watch your tape, you realize you're struggling finishing through contact, then maybe you go watch Kawhi Leonard, who's great at finishing through contact, and so that you can learn what you should be doing instead of what you're currently doing. To answer your question about kind of load management, the best thing that you can do is kind of identify first and foremost, maybe three things that you're going to work on all summer. So instead of trying to work on everything, which then you kind of are scattered around and you spend a lot of time and waste a lot of time on stuff, you just lock in on one, maybe two, maybe three things throughout an entire offseason so you can really add to your game. But then the way you do that is I always say kind of Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. So those 4 days should be two-a-days where you go, hard, really hard workout on a Monday, really hard workout on a Wednesday, really hard workout on a Friday. But then on Wednesday, you don't have a two-a-day. And on Tuesdays and Thursdays, you have medium pace workouts. So it'd be Monday, really hard workout in the morning, shooting at night. On Tuesday, medium workout, shooting at night. Wednesday, really hard workout, no shooting at night. Thursday, you're going medium pace workout, shooting at night. Friday, really hard workout, shooting at night. Saturday should be a competition day where you're doing 1-on-1, 2-on-2, 3-on-3, whatever, so that you can be more game-like. And then Sunday, take off unless your body recovers. So you notice Wednesday, Saturday, and Sunday, we're not doing night shooting so that we give ourselves enough time to break. And then what you should do is, if say you have a 12-week period of time, maybe you spend 4 weeks going really hard or 5 weeks going really hard, then give yourself like a week off, and then go 5 weeks really hard, and then give yourself a week off, then go like 4 weeks hard, maybe take a day or two off, and then ramp up again and then get, ready for whatever you're kind of preparing for. But that's what I would do. It's always like a flow, you know what I mean? Really hard, medium, take a little break, and so on, so that you're staying fresh so that you're, at your best in the season.
So you just mentioned that on Saturday they would play their competition, or they would play 5-on-5 or pickup or something like that. Say you're working on a
Yep.
skill, say you're working on finishing, change of direction finishing, and there's a player that you want to work on his cross step or step over, whatever you want to call that, their finish, step over
Yep.
finish or crossover finish. How do you ensure that that skill translates from on air or reps or whatever you want to call that to 5-on-5? Is there a certain step-by-step progression that you would take them through to make sure that they go from here all the way down to the other end of the spectrum?
I mean, it would just be exactly what we talked about earlier. I would go, break it down into mini parts, what I call micro skills. You would do the footwork first, one on air, then you would make sure they do it with one dribble, then you would do it with two dribbles, then you do it with full speed with dribbles, then you do it with a one-on-one dummy defender, then you do it one-on-one with, a kind of engaged defender, but they're a little bit behind, so the offense player has an advantage. Then you do it with full speed in a one-on-one setting, then build it up to 3-on-3, and then eventually it'll show up in 5-on-5.
Cool. I just want to add to that question that the viewer was asking. So when they asked, should we watch ourselves or the NBA, when we're watching people other than ourselves, or maybe someone who is at a higher level than ourselves, how do you recommend who they watch? Or do you recommend that they watch a whole lot of just different film? Or do you recommend that they watch a few different players?
No, I would just tell them to lock in on players that are similar. You know what I mean? Like it does me no good to go watch LeBron James.
Right.
I'm 5'11". I'm not, super athletic. I'm not bulky strong. I'm a guy that can knock down shots and make decisions. So I should watch a guy like Steve Nash. You know what I mean? So finding the people that play similar to you and try to steal from them, that's what I would recommend.
Okay. Well, I know that you're super busy. I want to be respectful of your time, but this is probably the most important question that I have for you. So it's very important to keep continually educating ourselves and get better as coaches. But for me, I feel like no one really cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And so that really comes down to relationships. How do you go about building such amazing relationships with your clients and your players?
I think honestly, exactly what you just said. I mean, I just care about them. Like I care about them way more as people than I do as players. And that's the secret sauce. Most coaches, in my opinion, they really have the ability to improve basketball players. But if you can improve somebody's life, that's when you're really going to get, a real relationship with them that's going to allow you to go way deeper in basketball, way deeper in, kind of the things that really matter. And I always tell people you got to know everything that's going on in the player's world. You got to know who's in their circle. You got to know the stresses and struggles they're going through. You have to know kind of what makes them tick. You have to know what excites them. You have to know all these things. And if you know all these things, then it's going to allow you to finally get the kind of relationship you need and the trust you need to get the results that you want on the basketball court. But most of the time, when you have kind of flaws in the game and when you have slumps occurring, it's because something's going on off the court. So if you're not aware of what's going on off the court, it's going to be hard to help them on the court.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Drew, I really appreciate your time. Where can all our listeners and viewers find out more about you, get in touch with you? What do you got going on right now?
Yeah, definitely. No, I mean the biggest thing that I've been doing is that micro skills series. I know that the international listeners hate me right now, but we're working on a solution outside of my text community to deliver some of those episodes. So eventually we will have a texting service for the international community as well. I know right now it's only U.S. and Canada, but my all my social media platforms, I try to put out as much good content as I can. So if they follow me on any of my social media platforms, they'll get some good stuff that'll help them improve their games or improve their mind.
Awesome. Drew, I really appreciate your time, bud. Thanks so much.
No doubt. Stay safe, my man.
Yeah, you too. Speak soon. Okay. And now, go see.